right, thank you. So everyone, welcome one more time to another Women Leadership Forum of Asia webinar. As you know, in this set of series, we have the Power of Sisterhood, which happened a couple of days ago. Today, we're going to look at men as diversity partners. And I'm hoping the conversation next week, which is around moving beyond programs and events to be able to create impact, is going to be useful for all of us who are passionate about and already working on creating and developing diverse and inclusive cultures within our organization. So, for those of you who are joining in for the first time, I'm Dr. Sujaya Banerjee, and I'm the founder of the Learning and OD Roundtable and the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. We created the Women Leadership Forum of Asia about 6 years ago under the aegis of the Learning and OD Roundtable. Here's how we want to deliver this webinar today. We are going to start by telling you a bit about the Women Leadership Forum of Asia and some of the upcoming programs that I'm sure you'll find immensely useful to participate in. Also an invitation to all those who are not yet members of the Women Leadership Forum of Asia to be able to come in on board, to be able to access insights from our research studies, and from our Learning Resource Center, and a whole lot of other things that is available to people who come in as paid members to the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. We will then have a little bit of a context setting to today's topic before I invite our very erudite, very seasoned, very experienced panelists to be able to join me into a conversation. Our webinars are powerful and thought-provoking and hopefully insightful conversations. So we don't use the formality of panel discussions. We really have and believe in having vibrant conversations that inspire people who join these webinars to be able to think differently and hopefully create, go back with inspiring ideas on creating diverse and inclusive workplaces, which indeed is the credo of the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. So let me get started and then I'll bring the panelists in. Some quick housekeeping before we get started. Do make sure that, you are comfortably poised, you have a good connection. Your mics have been centrally put off and also your videos in the interest of improving the webinar learning experience for all of you. We will put out, our own views and comments as we go along, but you please do that and use the chat box impactfully to be able to post your views and opinions other than your questions to us here today. So questions can be directed to specific panelists with their names if you want. You can go into the Q&A box to be able to park your questions, and we will weave all of this into the conversation that we have as we go along. We'll try and use some audience polls if they are relevant in our conversation so that you have a chance to be able to have your say, even through some of the pulse checks that we'll do as we go along during the conversation. All right. So I think with that, let me start by presenting the Women Leadership Forum of Asia to all of you. Just a quick word to everyone, including the panelists, that this particular webinar is being streamed through YouTube and will be available on YouTube for the continuing access of those who have not been able to join our conversation here today, right? So those of you who would like to, including the panelists, refer people to want to watch this particular conversation, it will be available going forward on YouTube, right? So I think with that, let me introduce the Women Leadership Forum of Asia to all of you. So Rupali, help me change the slides, please. Move forward. We've called it Enabling Crucibles of Women Leadership because we called it the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. But frankly, it's far more than only integrating women because it's actually an inclusion forum. So it's about being able to create inclusive work environments. It's about including all kinds of diverse groups into your organization. We called it the Women Leadership Forum of Asia when we started out about 7 years ago, because frankly, this was the diverse group that was staring us in the face, and we hadn't yet even been able to integrate this group, which is actually available talent that is educated, qualified, high on aspiration, and actually available to be able to start contributing much like the men. So the Women Leadership Forum of Asia, but it actually works on all kinds of diversity. So move forward. These forums are committed to, essentially building cultures of inclusion, like I said, for all kinds of diversity, multi-generations, people with disabilities, LGBTQ, social, we want to encourage socio-cognitive diversity, especially because such a significant part of the talent community is still focusing on hiring as part of building diverse groups. So we want to be able to also explore bringing in people who are not similar inside the organization and to be able to create cultures of innovation. We have a four C's model, which is conviction, courage, competence, and commitment, which is each one of these C's speak volumes for the kind of work that we actually do. The conviction's so ever so important, and it's ever so important to create that conviction also in the diverse groups that we work with. Courage to be able to make a difference, build competence and capabilities so that when there is opportunity, these diverse groups are prepared to be able to take on bigger responsibilities and lean in for the tougher jobs. And of course, commitment to be able to create that kind of momentum inside organizations where there's continuous commitment to become equal opportunities, not just in word, but in spirit, and to truly integrate human potential and create workplaces that manifest this human potential to create equality and respect and opportunity for all within organizations. Move forward. um, we focus on both skill set and mindset, and the what's worth mentioning here is the Women Leadership Forum of Asia Academy, which is now completely online. And I recommend strongly that those of you who want to invest in development programs around this, we actually combining our capability through the learning and OD roundtable with the philosophy and the journey of the Women Leadership Forum of Asia by being able to offer you a series of events. Some of these have free registrations, like the one you're attending right now, and a lot of them are paid, but they're nominally charged for online, high quality, rooted in research, relevant learning inputs that can be used to be able to sensitize leaders, to be able to create inclusive work environments, build capabilities for various diverse groups within your organizations. So do at the end of this webinar, reach out to some of our coordinators. You may have registered through Prudel or through Rupali, so do reach out to them. Should you be interested in being able to know more about the Women Leadership Forum of Asia Academy? Move forward. The Learning and OD Roundtable, I must make a mention of that because that's our overarching body. Women Leadership Forum of Asia is a subset of this very very vibrant learning forum called the Learning and OD Roundtable. This has been around for over 11 years and has over 25,000 members. Um, this is traditionally been available across various cities, and now in its online format, we are delighted that we have participants who join us from Nepal and from Singapore and from the rest of Asia and from Sri Lanka and a whole lot of other places. We're very excited that this has grown into becoming more of an Asia sort of forum that is sort of, curating, interesting and relevant conversations that attract so many people to come in and learn. Move forward. Here's the very outstanding, set of people who are behind the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. Each one of them is an industry icon. I'm sure you recognize many of these faces here. I'll just call out their names quickly, which is Adil, who's also on our panel today, doesn't need an introduction. There's me. I am also the CEO of Capstone People Consulting, and we do a lot of work also in the D&I space. Srinivas Venkatram, is the founder of Illumen Labs. Dr. Akhil Basrai of Akhil Basrai Consulting, Dr. Prince Augustine of Mahindra, Manu Badwa of Sony Pictures Network. We have Rajesh Padmanabhan, who is an independent consultant. We have Rajesh Upadhyay from the Academy of Applied Emotional Intelligence. He's the dean of that institution. And Rajesh Kamath, who's extremely popular and also runs Chanakya Consulting, his own company. Move forward. The Women Leadership Forum of Asia, do join, this ongoing journey, whether as members or even as part of the virtual academy. So this is an announcement for you to be able to reach out to our, coordinators from WLFA who can tell you more about this. Move forward. Join the movement, which is become members. Like I said before, move forward. Here's the next panel that's coming up next week. You may want to diarize this. This is on the 9th of September from 4 to 5:30. And this again features industry leaders. And this time we're talking about creating DNI impact within organizations and why only events and programs will not work. Let's move forward. Yeah, we've got this as our outreach program. We're very passionate, very excited about this. It's called Gender Dialogues. And our positive affirmation is to be able to reach out to 100,000 male and female students, undergraduate students, to be able to enhance the gender dialogue. So the idea is to be able to shape a different society where men and women interact with each other and improve the dynamic, make it more equal, make it more mutual, and make it more collaborative to be able to enable each other. So we want to be able to change this by working and talking to the youth. And there's 100,000 students that we're reaching out to. If you want to join this movement in any form as a facilitator, or you want to sponsor this outreach as part of your CSR initiatives, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to be able to work with you on this. Let's move forward. The Best Diversity and Inclusion Practice of Asia study, which is ongoing right now. This concludes on the 15th of September. So last leg for any of you who want to participate. There are 13 categories in which we're inviting best practices. Please bring this forth so that you can share your best practice with the community. And if you are an award winner, we've got a fabulous panel, international panel, and some experts from India who are on the panel. So do participate. And in the event that your best practice is selected for being featured as a winning best practice, you get invited to speak at the Best Diversity and Inclusion Practice of Asia seminar on the 2nd of December. So 15 September, last date for you to be able to reach out, send us your best practices. And 2nd December, do diarize for the seminar. And we're looking forward to be able to have a grand online seminar, the largest in the DNI space, with large categories of very relevant best practices and awards. So do come forth uh, and share your best practice so that we can enable the community to learn and for your organization to shine as being at the vanguard of diversity and inclusion within the community. Move forward. I think with that, we're going to come to the topic for today, which is giving a fillip to your gender diversity programs, men as diversity partners. So the reason for this context is, we have a very erudite panel, but I want to make sure that everybody who's out there attending this is on the same page before we start inviting them with questions that we've lined up. And like I said, keep this vibrant, keep your comments going, keep your questions going so that this can become one grand conversation. So giving a fillip to your gender diversity programs, men as diversity partners. Move forward. I'm going to use a couple of minutes to set a context here, but before that, here are the very outstanding panelists who will join me after I've set the context and shared the preamble. Adil Malia, CEO of the firm, SV Nathan, very respected, veteran HR professional, is the partner and chief talent officer at Deloitte. He has a beautiful backdrop with an equality sign, and that kind of speaks volumes for the kind of equity that the Deloitte organization believes in and stands for. So it's the perfect backdrop for SV Nathan here today. Dr. Deepak Deshpande, who is the CHRO and Senior Vice President of NetMagic Solutions. Deepak's always been a very incredible individual for the kind and quality of work that he does. He ran a very important essential services organization through the lockdown, has incredible ability to share stories and insights, and is also a fantastic singer. So we'll try and see whether we can squeeze that in at the end. But Deepak's, you're going to enjoy being able to share and hear Deepak speak here today. Last but not the least, Madhavi Lal, heads human resources for the Deutsche Bank, is again a veteran HR professional, extremely grounded, very, very balanced, and is a woman achiever herself, and extremely humble about that. And we're really excited to have her on board today to be able to share some of the insights as our only female on the panel other than myself. So very excited. Like you can see, we brought in the men on the men as diversity partner conversation, but we also have a very accomplished female who has been through all the twists and turns and all the heat before you can occupy a senior leadership position within organizations as a woman, particularly from our generation. I'm really excited to have Madhvi Lal on this panel as well. So we'll bring them in the conversation in just a bit. Let me just move on to share a few facts, all rooted in research. I will share some stories and insights as well from what I experience in my practice. Our D&I practice is very vibrant at Capstone. We deal with very many large organizations, and I have the added advantage of running this forum, which also gives us through the academy access to many insights at ground level realities on the entire movement on gender diversity in India. So let's move forward. I'm going to get started with sharing the obvious. The case for gender diversity stares you in the face. There is enough and more research to be able to show that organizations succeed more, they earn higher revenues, they can attract more customers, the after sales service experience and the customer experience is enhanced when you have women involved in the job. The whole process of identifying new markets and improving success in cross-cultural negotiations is seen to be enhanced when you have women on your team. Women bring in new worldviews and their own lens, their perspective in the way in which they view the world, that can stimulate innovation and boost growth potential. I mean, that sounds like a lot, and you can't think of any reason why any organization would not want to integrate women within the workforce. Uh, Diversity helps Indian companies in also addressing the increasingly competitive talent shortage. So, notwithstanding which times, we continuously learn from organizations that there is a shortage of talent, that they don't see enough talent, and so women is the answer. And we'll come to more on what is indeed the business case for why organizations must integrate women. I know this is already sold to many organizations. It's also obvious to many organizations, but I'm still calling it out because I cannot deny that I have come across enough organizations in the last couple of years who are still struggling with this agenda and are not completely convinced on the business case for why they must integrate women, other than their availability in the larger talent pool, on why it is that they must integrate women into the workforce. So there is a lot, and most of the organizations that have hired women are waiting to see some of these indicators of success pan out. And our conversation today is exactly around that, and more of that next week as well, that you will not see that impact automatically unless there's something very significantly you're doing right in the middle, right? So right in the middle of hiring and seeing the impact. So we'll talk more about that. Move forward. So 67% of employers, and in India, 51% employers say they do not find enough talent. I must say that through the lockdown, the organizations that are still hiring continue to experience this shortage of talent. Move forward. So here's the story of women in India, right? And for a lot of you, perhaps already know this, which is larger number available at the entry levels. So it's relatively easier to have them in the junior band. Significant leakage in the pipeline by the time you go to mid levels. At senior levels, this is converted into 3 to 6%. And boards still struggle, and some of the organizations prefer paying fines to actually having women on their boards. So I know this kind of sounds bleak, and I must tell you that while the national averages is at about 24%, I'll give you a perspective that women in the workforce representation is averaged at about 50% worldwide, and the developing world has as much as 80%, 79% representation of women in the workforce. Move forward. So interestingly, the research shows, and I'm saying this because I think there's been a popular view that women are not so ambitious, that they're actually not looking to be able to have careers. It's the patriarchy at play. They themselves want to be able to be married, look after homes, raise children, become the primary caregivers. So they don't really have the aspiration to be able to pursue careers. And all careers don't have to be in the business world, but careers as teachers, careers, in hospitals as health caregivers. They just, and the hospitality industry is part of government. I mean, there's lots of avenues for women to be able to contribute. So this research was important, and I always include this because it busts the myth that women are not high on aspiration. It appears it's not aspiration, it's actually confidence, which seems to be a bit of a challenge. And we'll try and explore why confidence may be a challenge when we also talk to our very erudite panel that will join me in the conversation later today. Move forward. Here's our snapshot, right? I mean, we have a problem, and I think the sooner we acknowledge it, we'll do more work around it. Is that we're also the worst representation of women in the workforce all across Southeast Asia. So even if you talk about the larger ethos being feudal or the larger ethos being patriarchal, I mean, it's the same for a lot of countries across the world. And they've still maneuvered this and they've still been able to overcome the challenge of the patriarchy. We seem to be still persisting with that. So there's inherently something which is very comforting around here, which does not let us challenge the status quo as much as some of the other countries seem to have done. As you can see, junior management, mid management, senior management representation, we lag behind most other countries also in the region. Move forward. But then huge changing demographics as the economy has grown. Currently, with the lockdown, we have challenges around this. But the truth is that with 49% of the population uh, being women, there is no doubt about the fact that they continue being the largest consumers within the economy, the biggest decision makers and the largest consumers within the economy. Move forward. Several companies have unfortunately not recognized this gender dividend, this worldview or this lens that you get when you actually integrate women into the workforce. And I say this because women are hugely populated in junior bands, at best at the mid bands. I must say that through my conversations with leaders and my conversations with various organizations, there is an optical myth about women. There is a general sense that they're all over, and I see a lot of them. Are you serious? These are the numbers? Because I see more women working than what I can see here, at least in our organization or around. And this is because a large number of women have administrative roles. And so you see them when you're checking in to be able to get onto a flight. You will see them as flight attendants. You will see them serving you in a restaurant. You will see them taking your order if you went out somewhere, whether you went to you went to a Starbucks or you went anywhere else. And I know all of that is still not back into our lives, but you do know what I'm talking about, is that they're actually there, but they're there in the junior bands. And when I talk about gender dividend, what I really mean is, do we have enough of them in significant positions where they actually can make decisions? And that seems to have missed many organizations, that the objective of being able to bring women in is so that you can leverage the gender dividend. Move forward. So let's talk about what do women really struggle with, because our conversation today, having talked about where we are with women and women inclusion in our workforce, uh, unfortunately, the story seems to have been left at representation, which is the number of women that you already have on board. And the minute organizations have opened up their doors to also hire women, there is an elated sense of equal opportunity, an elated sense that we're doing a great job, whereas we may not be actually driving the career advancement and opportunities for them to be in significant roles. I've also seen the career advancement opportunities being driven in a manner which leaves a lot to be desired, because it may not convert into what we really want through women empowerment and confidence and contribution to be able to take on significant leadership roles within the organization. So let's look at what do women struggle with and why are we asking men to be diversity partners. Move forward. So underconfidence, and I think this kind of is, it doesn't sound good. A lot of women who are very confident and who come across, sort of can be assertive, can be very smart, oftentimes push back on this view. But this is what it is. This is what the research shows up, and I want more people to be empathetic about the fact that when we put out this research, it's not necessarily women who are urban, upbeat, English speaking, and have had perhaps the opportunity to belong to a socioeconomic class that has perhaps enabled certain opportunities for you. The underconfidence is across the board. It's across tiers. It's across socioeconomic classes, and it comes from the way in which we perpetuate the patriarchy. So the patriarchy rewards, first of all, expects women to not have an identity of their own. So uh, you are either identified, and this continues to be the case, is you identified in association with your father or your husband, depending on whether you're married or not. a very significant sense of identity, which patriarchies are embellished with that. You're rewarded as a woman for typically not speaking up. So if you're actually not very um, you're not assertive or argumentative, you're actually rewarded at home. I know this is changing with the new generation, but we still have a very urban and a very sort of certain economic socioeconomic class that we're referring to when we talk about the new generation of women becoming more articulate, more communicative, more assertive. So this is definitely changing, but there still seems to be a perpetuating problem of underconfidence because of the way in which the patriarchy raises women to not really be prepared for the business world. And so they can actually struggle with the workplace, not knowing what it is that they can say, what are the boundaries, whether they are transgressing when they do something. So a lot more self-doubt there, and that's what we really mean when we're talking about underconfidence. Move forward. Leadership, does not come naturally. And this could well be because one of the confusions we have within the patriarchy is a confusion between chivalry and chauvinism. So it is not uncommon for women to have, in their early years and much later, have significant men in their lives taking decisions for them, and therefore to be able to have a point of view, to be able to take the lead, to be proactive. There is a sense of hesitation by and large, and that's what the research around women typically reveals. Here again, I want to qualify that I think a lot of this we see shifting for the better with the millennials. But I want us to have not just an India but a Bharat perspective when we're talking about some of these pointers on what the research shows on women. Move forward. The imposter syndrome. Now, this is something which is commonly found, in the research when they started out. This was about women who were in business, and then eventually this research expanded to be able to get validated through women who are in the workforce, which is a sense of believing that you're being deceitful, pretentious. That you don't actually deserve to be where you really are, especially if you're succeeding in a workplace, and that you're scared of being found out. And interestingly, this research extends itself to say that there are also men who experience the imposter syndrome, but interestingly, this is more prevalent in women than in men. Comes from being underconfident, comes from not actually being sure of yourself, comes from being from a space where you believe that you are not perhaps deserving of what it is that you're experiencing through your career, especially if you win a pitch, or you get promoted, or there's something great that really happens, which is an upward progression professionally. There is a sense to be able to not actually believe it's really happening, don't believe that you actually deserve that, and that you're really worried that others will also find out that you don't really deserve to be where you are, or to be doing what you're doing. Move forward. Non-entrepreneurial, and I know there are lots of women who are entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur myself, and the rest of that, but this is few and far between. By and large, women hesitate because being an entrepreneur requires you, especially in the Indian landscape, requires you to have social intelligence across class of people, very significant interaction with men across classes. And this is another reason why very often organizations struggle to be able to give women significantly senior roles within organizations, especially if the interaction requires you to be able to deal across a cross section of stakeholders, which may not be, qualified in conditions that the organization cannot control at all times. But it also comes from a chivalry orientation, which is often mass chauvinism, where you believe that the woman may not be able to interact with, let's say, investors on one end, government on the other end, tehsildars at another end, sarpanch on another end. And I think oftentimes this is the challenge. So non-entrepreneurial in terms of perhaps not having, not having a larger landscape where they can actually influence entrepreneurship. Move forward. But I am a girl. This is essentially deeply ingrained. And while this sounds like something that is, belonging to a previous generation, we did focus group discussions with millennial women, and we still found the same challenge, which is, self-imposed restrictions coming out of the quality of upbringing. And this is again the patriarchy at work, where you believe there are some things you can do and a lot of things that you can't do because you're a female. So, for example, we had a very interesting situation where, we had a very senior woman who we appointed on one of the boards. This is especially post the Companies Act making it mandatory for women to be on boards. And she joined the board and went through the first two meetings, post which the CEO and a couple of other people on the board came back saying that, you should just know that she doesn't say anything in the meetings. She quietly signs where we ask her to sign, but she just simply doesn't say anything. She's even been asked for reviews a couple of times, and she says, "No, I'm just listening and I'm just fine." So we did check with her offline, and of course, it took some series of conversations before we realized that she claimed that because she'd been raised in a family where you don't speak up, especially when there's a group of animated men who are deep in discussion. And she said, "I've been raised in a conservative family. We don't normally speak when men are speaking in voices." That oftentimes the scenario in the room did not give her the space to be able to come in because, there was a lot of animated discussions in the room. So women have all kinds of self-imposed, sort of inhibitions, and a lot of it is the patriarchy at work. Move forward. OMG, it's time to get married. This continues to be a bias because of which organizations do sometimes do not want to hire young people. One of the reasons why organizations have insisted on women being included in the interview panels is because this is a tendency to be able to, there is a tendency to be able to ask, especially when young women come up as candidates in across the interview panel, where there are questions around, especially if they are unmarried, questions around when do you plan to be married, um, you know, and a huge fear that we will lose the resource when the individual marries. Similarly, if the woman's married, then questions around when you plan to have children, because it's seen as a very heavy emotional and social commitment, and most women are not able to navigate that. So, huge amount of concern around, the whole piece on how marriage actually, sort of in a way, is the real social sanction that women are looking for. That the real achievement, even if they've come out of premier schools, is when they are married. And so this is a very significant milestone. I'm afraid in our society, it appears that it is a bigger significant milestone for women than it is for men, although men are also marrying these women. So I'm presuming that, both see it as a milestone. This can be a deal breaker for women, however, in the context of careers. So I'm going to call this a bias. Move forward. Move forward. I can either be, go back, please. I think you missed a slide. I can either work or be a good mom. Yeah. So, again, this challenge, which is when women actually have children and are actually handling this transition and need a fair amount of flexibility around, oftentimes if they are in demanding jobs or jobs that require travel and the rest of that, it is not uncommon for them to believe that they can either be good moms or they can, be great at work. Yeah. I'm really happy to see some of the comments in the chat box, and I know some of you are challenging that thought, but I'm sharing with you what the research says, so that we have like a context, because this is so layered. What is true for a large group of people could easily not be true for you because you belong to a different context, and maybe it's not true for you individually. Yeah, so I'm just going to ask you to be open minded as we're sharing this, and of course we will try and, we will try and pick up your perspectives and also hear your perspectives, which we most certainly want to do. Let's move forward. Women and biases, and this I'm going to talk about because this is real and palpable across organizations. Is that the minute the organization is reaching out to be able to hire women, into the workforce, they are labeled as diversity candidates. So even as they come in, they get referred to informally or otherwise as, she's here because they're chasing some form of representation target, almost insinuating may not be there on merit. And this may not happen unanimously to everyone, but it is not uncommon for women to be able to experience this. I have, in the last couple of years, in the last less than 2 years, so this is a very recent experience, experienced this in several organizations. So I'd like to believe that this is something that is rampant. It's in the informal network, it's cooler conversation, but the women do know that they get referred to as diversity candidates. They almost treat it like there's a quota, and therefore they perhaps don't deserve to be here, but they're here because the organization was compelled by the headquarters or somebody else to be able to hire women. And so this is compliance rather than really commitment to diversity. And these are not really equal candidates. That's the other layer to this, which is that they're really here because we're trying to complete a quota. This actually gets accentuated also when performance reviews are conducted and there are performance rewards announced. Recently, we had an instance of a couple of women in an organization who got to know from the floor once the rewards were announced, that the buzz around was that out of the 5 women in the team, and there were another 20 plus men in the team, 3 out of the 5 had been promoted. And the buzz around was that they're diversity candidates, and that's why 3 out of the 5 have been promoted, because the headquarters is pressurizing them to move the women up. And it was heart-wrenching to know that all 3 of them came back to be able to ask their manager that, did I get the promotion because I'm a diversity candidate? Because if that's true, then I don't want the promotion. And because I want the promotion on merit if I've really contributed. And I believe I have contributed, but what I hear all around is that you gave it to me because I'm a diversity candidate. And I know this is a one-off incident that I'm calling out, but this is quite rampant. And I don't know how many women in the audience have experienced this themselves. This is not in the formal conversation. This is in the informal conversation, that you get labeled as a diversity candidate who's being favored as a result of being part of this, this drive to be able to comply with expected numbers of women at different levels within the organization. Move forward. I'm going to, at this stage, show you a short video. I don't know how, it's an ad, so watch it, but it's very interesting. And I'm going to leave you to your interpretations on what it is that you make out of this ad, right? So go forward. Can we play this video, please?
ये हो गया. Complete and recommended promotion list.
Thank you. Kiran, recommended by Rajat. Obviously.
Who's Kiran? And why obvious?
Can you restart this? Suneet? Just give us a minute. We'll just restart this so that you can watch it. Yes, Dr. Akhil, just hold on. We're just going to be starting that video again. Just give us a second. Suneet?
ये हो गया. Complete and recommended promotion list.
Thank you.
This so that you can watch it.
Kiran, recommended by Rajat. Obviously.
Who's Kiran? And why obvious?
So Kiran,
Yes,
Star of Rajat's
Dr.
team.
Akhil, just hold on. We're just going to be starting that video.
Rajat उसको हर प्रोजेक्ट में ले लेता है सर. He says they make a great team. यंग है, फ्रेशर है, पर रजत को उस पे पूरा भरोसा है सर. And जब देखो they are working together. Not just in office, huh? They spend weekends also on work. On discussions, brainstorming sessions.
ये हो गया.
या some
Complete and recommended promotion
सबसे
list.
पहले ऑफिस आते हैं, सबसे लेट निकलते हैं. For them, it's all about work, sir. Kiran,
हम भी देखें
recommended by
recommendation.
Rajat. Obviously, sure, sir.
Who's Kiran?
हाँ, किरण को अंदर
And why
भेजिए.
obvious?
Thank you. So Kiran, star of Rajat's team.
Hold on. We're just going to be
Everyone,
starting that video.
Rajat उसको हर प्रोजेक्ट में ले लेता है सर. He says they make a great team. Young है, यंग है, फ्रेशर है, पर रजत को उस पर पूरा भरोसा है सर। जब देखो दे वर्किंग not just in office. They spend weekends also on work. On discussions, brainstorming sessions. सबसे लेट निकलते हैं. For them, it's all about work. Kiran, recommendation. Obviously, sure sir.
Who's Kiran?
Kiran,
Why obvious?
Thank you. Sir, Kiran. Staff everyone project में ले लेता है sir. He says they make a great team. यंग है, फ्रेशर है, पर रजत को उस पर पूरा भरोसा है सर। जब देखो दे वर्किंग not just in office. They spend weekends also on work. Discussions, brainstorming sessions. सबसे लेट.
Yeah, thank you. So we had to switch screens there because there was a challenge with the connection. But I hope most of you have had a chance to be able to see that video. It's obviously a Titan ad, and what it had for those of you, I think some people said they couldn't hear. So there was obviously a reference. This is a group of people who are looking at promotions during the year, and someone's talking about a recommendation of promotion for somebody called Kiran. Now, Kiran is a gender neutral name. Men are called Kiran, and so are women. And so, interestingly, people are talking about late nights, how they always work together, they're always together. And the entire team's already picturing some very attractive woman who's called Kiran, who works together with her manager. And of course, what emerges at the end is there's a young lad who's been working closely with his boss and obviously doing a great job, which is the reason why he's been recommended for a promotion. But I think what the ad's trying to essentially say is that the minute there is a woman who's doing well, it's always attributed to something else. It's called an attribution bias, which is when you don't want to recognize the competence of the individual, and especially when you just have a name like Kiran in the ad, and you already have people conjecturing all kinds of things around it till they unfortunately find that Kiran's indeed a lad. It's a boy, it's a man rather than a woman. So I think this is essentially to make the point that there are biases, and there's labeling, there are conjectures, there's the attribution bias around why it is that women might be succeeding. I don't know how many people have experienced this, but this is a very common experience. And I think it's part of the evolution within the workplace, which is still getting used to being able to see women succeed. And I know that it's perhaps people like Madhvi, who's on the panel, and myself, our generation would have perhaps experienced a greater heat with this because we were lesser and few and far between. But this is not uncommon, and it is worth mentioning because people still experience this within the workplace. Can you share go back and share my deck, please? I just have a last piece that I will take you through, and then let's try and close it out. So clearly, gender inclusion, what can you really do about it? Move forward. Yeah. So there are ways in which men can get involved. Move forward again. Move forward. Sponsor high potential women. This is commonly what gets done within various organizations. Move forward. Support flexibilities around work. Move forward. Model the right behaviors. Move forward. Communicate. Move forward. Get involved in company-specific initiatives. And get women to have more opportunities and visibility, really. And that's what we'll talk more about as we go along. Move forward. So we're talking about building inclusive workplaces today, especially building more inclusive workplaces in the context of gender. Move forward. And more empathetic leadership is what we want to explore today. Move forward. We want to be talking about how this inclusiveness needs to be bottoms up, so that everyone is contributing towards creating these cultures. Move forward. Inclusion cannot be a training program, it's a culture. So it's very important for it to be imbibed within the organization so that all the touch points are sensitized, especially as you're trying to integrate diverse groups. Move forward. And only numbers and quotas and all of that don't quite work. It's much more than that. Move forward. And clearly the power of sisterhood, which is women also supporting each other. So today when we talk about men as diversity partner, it only comes on the back of us already having spoken about the power of sisterhood last week. Move forward. And real inclusion is a philosophy that everyone has something of value to contribute and everyone has a right to belong. And for organizations to be able to create that, it's not just about getting the talent on board, but to be able to support them. I think, particularly during the lockdown, we're experiencing many challenges of women who are already part of the workforce having challenges to come back. And this is the patriarchy at play again, where we have chivalry and chauvinism mixed up. And so many women having challenges to be able to return to work because the families find it too unsafe. So, in so many ways, the work from home is an opportunity, but the returning to the office or returning to work seems to be continuing to be a challenge in pockets. In the same breath, I've seen organizations that have reinvented how it is that they use women within the workplace and redefined roles, upgraded what they want from women, which is really fantastic. So this is an opportunity, really, and we'll try and explore that with this very erudite panel that we have. So let's get everybody on board. Sunit, can we have the gallery and have everyone on board? And I'm again very excited with this absolutely outstanding panel, which is just so experienced, seasoned, and has so many lovely, beautiful insights. So I'm going to start at the start with Nathan, and I think you're heading a very vibrant organization that already employs a lot of women. You even have the equal sign right at the back of you. Give me some reactions, to what I just said right now. My own sense is that organizations themselves have a rosier picture of their gender diversity agenda because they've given opportunity to people. So I'm just trying to ask whether you believe that to be true, that there is actually a lot of work to be done at ground level. But the fact that we've even opened up the passage to be able to include women by itself is seen as an achievement or an accomplishment. So give me your views on that.
So, Sujaya and all members who are on the panel today, it's a little difficult to speak to all of you today. Three of the members on the panel, including you, Sujaya, they're all PhD holders. So whether it's yourself, it's Deepak, or whether it's Adil, they're all PhDs. And then if you look at Madhavi, she is an MSc in mathematics, which is way above what I've done. I just did BSc mathematics. And the only saving grace is both of us went to the same business school. So I think what I will focus on is try to be, not try to be very clever, but try to just say things as they are. First things first, organizations coming up and saying, we have done this and we have done that, you've only scratched the surface. I think there is a lot of foundational work that has got to be done. True culture doesn't come in unless you see a lot of actions based on some of the values that you carry. For example, we carry a value which is we have to be inclusive. And if that is part of this, anything that we do, even if you see the equal to sign out here, it doesn't say the women are equal to men. No, men are equal to the women, because that is what we want to tell our people. This is an important thing. But unless people start to believe in it, and nothing of these kinds of stuff can be ever run by programs coming up and saying, 50% of my women who are there on board coming in from campus, they're all 50% women. Makes no sense. Unless you're able to demonstrate that 50% of the people who are in leadership positions are women. Substantial part of what we do in organizations, businesses are led by women. So I think I'm not wanting to dismiss the whole thing away by saying, no, organizations are not doing enough, but I would just say we have just scratched the surface. One good thing that has happened today, and all out to people like you, Sujaya, is you're raising the awareness. People are starting to believe in it. And they're saying, okay, if I've not done this, there is merit in starting somewhere. So it's a change in mindset, and that has started. So whatever that happened 25 years ago, and if you look at what's happening today, there's a huge change. And we are all experiencing that change. And I know there are a few people who are on the call today, and they would be able to see the visible change that is around. Yes, we need to talk about some difficult things. Like, for instance, as much as we talk about inclusion of women and all that, I don't think we spend a lot of time talking about things like um, gender pay equity, inequities and promotion, inequities and opportunities. And then there's a whole host of things that you spoke about are the subliminal biases. So, long story, this is about just a start. There's a lot of work that has got to be done. The good news is organizations have started to take some action, but for some of them to believe that they have already reached their goalpost, they don't realize that the goalpost is now a moving goalpost. So they have to make sure that they look at subsequent goalposts as they move along. So those are my 2 cents there.
Right, right. I think so well said. I think with that, I'm going to hand this over to Adil. Adil, give us your insights. I'm going to just start by saying, do you believe that organizations have a rosier picture of how well they've done? And I'm going to get your view on that first question before we move forward.
So, Sujaya, we are talking about a situation where gender inclusion is getting mistaken as gender engagement and strategic connection. Now, that's good news and bad news, because number one, there are two things we will have to learn to differentiate. One is gender diversity, and the second is talent diversity. So on the one hand, number one, we need to begin with some of these things. You're right, statistically including the people in the stage one of the journey is very, very critical, because unless you have the critical mass, unless you have the numbers of people coming into the organization from the other gender, you will never be able to create that kind of differentiated talent out of them. So therefore, we are on the right track. The first stage, we need to cover that first stage of gender diversity, but soon focus towards what organizations in real time need, and which is talent diversity. All right. So number one is we are on the right track. Number two is we need to progress on it and lead it to a talent diversity kind of platform. Now, 3 or 4 critical things that I thought I will in the next 1 minute or so share with you. Number one, why does it happen in most of the organizations? Number one is a classical brand positioning. Each one of our companies, if you look at their brand statements, wants to position themselves, at least in the perception of the talent market, so that they are able to attract the right talent as an equal opportunity employer. Now, when you can be an equal opportunity employer, but what is critical is your culture very paternalistic and protective towards this equality approach, or is it practical and more professional about this approach of wanting to create a culture which is a culture of equal opportunity and inclusion? So number one is that the brand positioning seems to come in the way. Number two is to understand this journey is to be divided into 4 parts. Number one is, of course, the statistical inclusion, because if you don't even have the number, you will never be able to create the differentiated offering. So number one is the statistical one. Second is engaged presence. The third is engaged and strategically connected presence. And fourth is authentic, engaged, and connected presence. And therefore, it has to progress itself. Now, when we are talking about creating an equal work environment, abracadabra, it's not going to happen tomorrow morning, considering the journey we have traveled from. So therefore, it will have to be journey to be undertaken. It reminds me of this beautiful Urdu couplet which says, "Main akhela hi chala tha, janibe manzil magar, log saath aate gaye, aur karwan banta gaya." So this journey we have to start, because this journey is very, very critical. Once we start the journey and cross the 4 stages, we will get to it. Currently, it is the test which seems to be at the superficial level. What we need to really take it is to its authentic level, where meaningful inclusion and strategic connections are brought about, so that women are made not only gender equal partners, but actually a talent equal partners. So that's my opening kind of position.
Right. I'm going to bring in, thanks Adil for that. And I think in your very creative, Urdu shairi, which is just so perfect, which is at least start on the journey. That itself is so great. But to not mistake that start as the destination. I think that's ever so important. Madhvi, I'm going to try and pull you in here. We have a very interesting comment on the chat box. This is from Vibhakar Ramtirkar. And he says that I want to address this to decision makers, not to common persons, but we look at women means we look at their face, attire, skin, complexion, hair color, ornaments, etc. Instead, we need to look at her capabilities. Then only women will be respected and treated equally. Do you want to respond to this?
First of all, Sujaya, thanks for having me on this panel. I think it's a topic that I've been very passionate about. And you spoke a bit about our generation. If I look at when I started my career, there was no concept of gender inclusion. I mean, it didn't exist, right? And just for the audience, I think a lot of you are very young. But when I had my son, my boss was a wonderful guy. I mean, we are still in touch. He actually told me that you were here only for 6 months because I had taken 3 months leave without pay, and he said, you've done a fabulous job the 6 months you were here, but I'll have to give you a lesser increase and a lesser bonus because you were not here for 6 months. And I was like, is it really my fault that men can't reproduce? And I think at that point I decided in my life that when I get to a position where I can make a decision that takes away this hit on a woman because she is the person who has a child and cannot leave the child, etc. So I think things have changed. So I think first I would like to say that we're trying to solve a problem here which has been built over centuries. So we shouldn't be too tough on ourselves because for some reason, as human beings evolved, somehow the position of women kept getting relegated, back and back. And I'm not an expert. I'm a math student. I'm not really a history student to say why it happened. It must have happened for various reasons. So we are trying to tackle in a few years a problem that has been created for centuries. But having said that, if we do nothing, it will take another few centuries to correct. So I think what we need to have is really faster, more impactful, actions, and not just in organizations, in societies, in our families, and that's where I mean it'll really make an impact. And I think I think Vibhakar, very good question. And I think you had an observation also on the governing council of the Women Leadership Forum. You said there's just 2 women out of the 9. I think very good observation. But I think we want men to be part of the dialogue. That's one. Second is there are fewer women leaders in the world today for whatever reasons. We are kind of in that situation. So and that's so my point to you. I think it's a very good point. We look at women. I mean, as in the organizations I have worked with, we have tried to get sort of train and make hiring managers aware of the unconscious biases. But it's a journey. I won't say it's perfect. Recently, we when we were doing an exercise for disability hiring, we actually and gender hiring, we actually did not share with the hiring manager the gender of the person when we were doing this CV shortlisting, and we had very interesting sort of results out of that. But yes, in a face-to-face interview, there will be some biases, but those biases will be there for men or women, I would say. So I think we have to keep on addressing the unconscious biases over time, I would say. Right. I think we've made great strides, but a lot more to do.
Yes.
Sujay, I wanted to add one point, and Madhvi's really touched a very sensitive and the right point. And so beautifully she said it. Are we tackling the problem from an unconscious bias point of view or unconscious gender bias point of view? Because when 2 men of equal qualifications appear for a common interview, generally you will see a guy who is tall, fair, carrying a mobile, wearing a fantastic suit, knocking with confidence, speaking good English, is from Palm Beach School or something like that, and knocking with confidence, getting the job as compared to the other equally competent guy who does not look so smart. So sometimes we mistake bias for unconscious gender bias, and that is where we should differentiate.
Yeah, I think point taken, but I think there's a very significantly large number of women who are I think subjected to this scrutiny of whether you're nice looking and what are you wearing and the rest of that, which I think makes a very significant impact on whether you want to have them on board or not, depending on what the job might really be. So I know point taken that not everything that we talk about is a gender challenge. I want to move over to Deepak, and we're keen to be able to hear you. I'm going to use the comment in the chat box that Anupama Kapoor has posted, and she's saying a big part of inclusion is equity. If men believe that some other groups don't have a level playing field, they should come forward and volunteer as allies and champions. Appointing them, if they're not inclined, can be counterproductive. So, what she's really saying is that it's about equality. And just as much as we want men to be diversity partners for women, if they believe there are some other groups that also require that kind of help, then they must do that to be able to create that level playing field within organizations. So give me a reaction to this, which is where you go to become, you kind of support the whole journey of inclusion and equity within the organization by supporting any group that is marginalized in any significant way, and not only women. So give me a response to that.
Yeah. As thank you, Dr. Sujay, and thank you for having me here in this august company of people here.
I'm not sure your voice is great, Deepak. Do you want to kind of check your
Yeah.
your mic? Yeah.
Okay. Is it better now? Okay. So I was saying, Dr. Sujaya, that this question is sort of as a great question. It is kind of I myself had put it on the chat some time ago. Companies should appoint male diversity champions to change macho cultures in the offices. What are your views? This question seems to have come in response to that. Nevertheless, it's a wonderful thought, and I tend to agree somewhere. When she says if the people are not inclined, that may be counterproductive. Having said that, the sense of equity that is very important in our behavior, the way the company culture, is evolving. So diversity is primarily it's a mix, and promoting diversity is the promotion, inclusion. Therefore, whatever we do, it is primarily you're dealing with a mix of genders there, and our practices, how we do those practices are going to decide how we're going to include those people. Just mere inclusion is not about just the numbers, like I think, like Doc said, right? True promotion of diversity is about perceiving and recognizing the value that women bring, or any person for that matter, right? So we should not promote diversity just because several studies have shown that the productivity goes up. There's so many studies that have shown that if you have diversity in the company, if you promote diversity, the productivity goes up, the company will do better profits and blah, blah, blah. It is not for that reason we should do. Rather, I would say that that is the right thing to do. We must do it because that is the right thing to do.
Good point.
So no individual, no organization, or even no group or nation ever progress focusing only on productivity at the cost of fairness and justice. So we need to recognize this fact. So basically what I'm pushing for is we need to be authentic. I think Doc said authentic behavior, authentic culture is what is required. So therefore, inclusion is actually like it smacks of allowance and permissions, mere acceptance. What is important is, are you able to listen to different voices and discuss things, right? And then deliberate, recognize, and incorporate, and bring that celebrity, kind of decision making. That's very important.
Right.
So if you're pushing people because that looks good, then you're going to have problem. That question was very wonderful question. I said, oh my God, why did I invite this question? And I did not invite. I wanted to know the audience to comment what the question, of course, came back very rightly so. Yes. Right? I was suddenly, when I read that question, something popped up in my head. I said, oh my goodness, what are we doing with Posh? Posh is supposed to be full of women. I was just trying to compare both the things and I had no answer, I need to really understand and, scratch the brains of, wise people like you and figure out what really makes sense. Yeah.
Right. I think with that, I'm going to ask a question around, how can men be significant allies to women? And I'm sure lots of people who've logged in today actually want to understand, how do you create that ecosystem where men become diversity partners? I'll start with you, Nathan, and, any insights, stories, suggestions on practices that you can actually share here for those who want to embark on this journey inside their own organizations.
So let me share with you my personal story. So my mother is a 10th standard pass, or rather was. She's unfortunately no more. And she was her school first. She was an outstanding lady. My grandfather did not allow her to do her SSLC and then get on because he kept on saying that, who will I find who will marry you and I don't have enough and I'm not a man of means. And my woman, but as a woman, she would have made the best CEO. And as a child, I saw this whole thing play out with me in my life. That's not enough. Then came my sister. My sister is an outstanding lady. She's a Mensa member. I think her IQ is a 1.5 to 152. And she went on to crack all these exams. And my father stopped her. And he said, I don't have money to send you to any of these business schools. And I could do nothing because in those good old days, you didn't have banks who would step up and say, I will give you a loan. There was no student loan in those days. And just given the way we were. And it was really bothering me because I was trying to tell my dad, why not? I mean, can we not do something for her? And my father said, we cannot do this. And by the way, if she does all this, then can you imagine what it would be to find another husband for her? And there were all kinds of reasons. Ultimately, my sister became a clerk in a bank. She is the best clerk in the world. Her children, one daughter, with a vengeance, went on to one of the IIMs. She's now doing exceedingly well in her life. Forget all that stuff. It stayed with me. In my very first job, where I've had a little bit of autonomy, and there was something where I was a person in charge, where I could influence some policy, there was a woman who came and joined the team, an outstanding woman. I mean, I've not met people like them ever. And one day she came up and she says, I'm expecting Krishna. She had already named a child. And Krishna could either be a boy or a girl. And she said, I'm expecting Krishna. And Nathan, so therefore, I may not be able to come to work. So we didn't have all these 6.5 weeks and all that. I said, you know what, lady, you can be at home. This work from home didn't start today. It started 25 years ago in my life because there was nobody to ask me. Who was there to ask me? My boss is going to ask me. I'll say, listen, you got to be looking at the results. Then came the other one, the childbirth, and after which she again came back and she said, I will need this and I will need that. And long story short, this woman, even in those days when we didn't have laptops, she still gave us the best results ever, ever, ever. And not to forget, in my life, when I was watching Nirmala, I was seeing my sister in action. Today, Nirmala is a woman of substance. She's done exceedingly well in her life and career. And I sit back and watch and I say, hey, it's not happenstance. This is something, this is there for a reason. So it's not like we have to take on these roles. Anything that we can do that can make a woman's life easier, do it because it's the right thing for you to do. Very much like what Deepak said. It is the right thing for us.
Yeah.
Don't
You
do it because you're...
happen that, when you and Deepak say it's the right thing to do, then we're counting on many people's right, which may not be the same right that you have or Deepak has. So it kind of does not kind of becoming, it doesn't kind of integrate, or it's not sustainable because then you're counting on too many people's individual perception of
So
life.
what you need to be doing is,
yes,
at any point in time, if you believe that you're a person of substance, you will then create your spheres of influence. And which is what successful people will do.
yeah,
Successful not because it's not about their success, successful people and successful in getting their ideas beyond the line. Beyond that is the most important thing. Once you get that started, I remember I walked into a room once and I said, there is no woman in this room. And why did I say this? Because I found that the language in that room was different. And then they brought a woman professional into that room. When that happened, the language changed, everything changed, and you would not believe it. That quarter, that organization started to do much better because people were focused. And I'm not saying it because it's the right thing. I can give you the names of these organizations.
Yeah.
I can tell you the names of the professionals because I believe that all of us have this. I mean, men as champions, first, all of us have stories. You have to believe in your stories. You have to live it. You'll have to influence, and you really will have to go all out because it's the right thing for you to do.
Well,
Influence is a big part of it. Anything that you can do in the realm of policies is one, but policies don't run organizations. You will have to create a culture.
yeah.
And culture is beliefs in action. Anything that you can do on those beliefs, stoking, get those people, and even, for example, small things which says, hey, listen, I really like the way that you espouse the cause of somebody. So today, if organizations like Deloitte, we have something where we sponsor women. Not mentoring is a passive act.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you say sponsor, you're espousing a person's cause. You're saying, well, I'm going to take this person under my wing. I will make sure that this person is successful, and I will make sure that I will do the following things. And then you can, for example, you can set out that these are the things that I've got to do for people who are kind of working with me. I've got to help them in networking. I will do regular check-ins. I will provide insights with them. Most important, I try to understand them as professionals and what they would want. As you can see, this is a subject which is very, very close to my heart. So yeah, I don't want to take a lot of airtime on this. Back to you.
No, I think great stuff, and I think you spoke about sponsorship, which was one of the points that we wanted to be able to raise in this conversation. Adil, you have groomed so many women through your entire career, and I've witnessed a lot of that. So please give us some more insights on how men can truly be diversity partners to women. So I think Nathan's talking about a mindset to want to be able to believe in equity and to not just espouse it, but to live it, and to be able to become role models by virtue of being able to do what's required to get done because it's the right thing to be really be able to do. That the ones who are outstanding and are showing high potential, that you actually sponsor those women, take them under your wings and actually groom them. That there are policies and programs that finally this is a mindset and it needs to be developed and role modeled inside organizations. It's a culture. Equity is a culture, and it needs to be built over a period of time. So I think he's made some very relevant points, and I think Deloitte as an organization works with many women professionals across practices. So they have a lot of ground level success stories to be able to talk about. Adil, why don't you share your insight? And I know that we're running short of time, but I want to be able to get one or two idea. Say something that will inspire the audience to be able to understand how to be able to embark on this. Yeah, how do you really
So,
start with it?
Sujaya, if you look at history, and so rightly has Nathan said it, that in history, whenever anything is actually got achieved, the cultural movement and revolution comes a little later. It is preceded by a handful of conscious people who have taken it upon themselves, despite of any kind of culture, to start the journey. And therefore, some 2000 years ago, this quote was given कि तू इधर उधर की बात न कर, तू ये बता के काफिला क्यों लुटा, मुझे रहबरों की फिक्र नहीं, मुझे राहजनों की फिक्र नहीं, मुझे रहबरी का तेरी रहबरी का सवाल है. Which means that there are people who are going to keep doing wrong, are going to continue to keep doing wrong. Don't tell me about all of that. Don't tell me about which company is doing what, or why it is not getting done, or how society is negative. Tell me, what did you do under your supervision to ensure that the change happens? मुझे रहजनों की फिक्र नहीं, मुझे तेरी रहबरी का सवाल है. What have you been doing? So I have personally seen that in whichever organizations that I have been leading, or HR or marketing or whatever, I have tried to work with the senior management, and I worked in multinational companies, and I worked with Indian companies, as you are aware of it. In the last Indian company, only after I joined, I had to first work with the ownership and the proprietorship of the organization to convince them that you will have to get senior women leaders who are more capable than what men you are playing around with, and they are not able to deliver to get into senior positions. And you have yourself experienced that you were one of our very, very earliest senior most leader woman who joined the company, and then we got a series of them. So therefore, you have to start the journey. The thing has to move away from protectionism. The thing has to move away from giving benefits to women as an index, so that we say how many things we have done. We have to move away from this horse trading of if someone gives 4 weeks, I will give 6 weeks. Someone gives 3 months, I will give 6 months. We should move away from all of those as kind of barometers of what we want to do, and get into what Nathan has been saying: meaningful inclusion of women in creating a talent advantage and not only a gender dividend out of the whole story. Several things we can do, but paucity of time, and we have to give airtime to all our speakers. That is why we will allow them to do it. But if you really sit down to count, I could identify some 15 things we could do to really bring about this equation and the organizational culture.
Right. Well said. And I think here I want to be able to integrate some of the comments that we've got from the audience here. We have Durga Chand who's saying, according to me, inclusion means creating the infrastructure that promotes a sense of belonging among diverse groups of employees. There's Vikram Kalyanpur who's saying, my father encouraged my sister to educate herself in Singapore, while my brother, who was equally brilliant, went on a scholarship abroad. The personal experience sharing is about how the family values are extrapolated in making DNI by conscious thought. And that is ever so true, Vikram. Couldn't agree with you more. That clearly those who actually manifest more equity in the workplace are the ones who have had personal experiences that actually inspire them to be able to bring this forth. Very interestingly, a lot of men have admitted to want to have become more sensitized to this, to this challenge, or this journey. The minute their daughters or their sisters were joining the workplace. So I think that's also, sometimes it's personal that actually inspires you and gets you to feel, to manifest, sort of more equity in your behavior in the workplace. There is Anupama who's saying diversity in organizations isn't natural, it's political, as is inclusion. To make room for minor or marginalized groups, the majority needs to give up privilege. Organizations need to invest in increasing men's awareness of the other genders, groups, inequities. Only then will they buy into inclusion. And I couldn't agree with you, Anupama, and that sensitization is something that we'll continuously need, and because you don't always have the tribe of Nathan who are in head HR positions to be able to very significantly influence this and role model this behavior, sort of inside organizations. I want to at this stage take two audience poll questions. Let's get your responses on it because while we've got some views here, there's a very large majority that's quiet. So we want to be able to hear what you have to say. Can we have the audience poll question up? We're going to go back, revisit this question. Let's get the first one up. Do you agree that the DNI agendas in most organizations are celebrated with hiring a few women? The hiring opportunity itself is seen as success of the agenda. Give us a yes or a no to this. That in most organizations, what you're celebrating is the hiring of women, even if it's a few women, and the hiring and the opportunity you're providing itself is seen as a success of the agenda. Give us give our a yes or a no in 30 seconds. And can we publish this, please?
Yes.
Okay, very significant 92%. So we kind of know and understand the work that remains to be done if we do not integrate gender and other diverse groups, including, like Anupama is rightly pointing out, other groups which also struggle with equity issues, or are marginalized in any manner. If we do not have a mechanism to integrate them, then just their sheer presence is not going to be able to do the job. So the impact we're actually looking for and the advantage of bringing in this lens, they got to be in positions where you can actually leverage this lens significantly. So unless this is linked to career advancement and growth and opportunity to be able to make decisions, it's not possible to be able to actually give them the equal opportunities you're looking for. So we're not looking for patronizing, we're looking for equal opportunity. Next question, get it up again, please. Do you agree women will need career advancement support to succeed in organizations? Do you agree that women will need career advancement support to succeed in organizations? that, this is not going to happen unless uh, largely men who are already in positions of power within organizations actually support this agenda meaningfully through sponsorship, through being able to build visibility by grooming, through mentoring women inside organizations. So respond to this. Take 20 seconds to do that. And Suneet, can we have this up? Can you get us our response to this? Can you publish the response? Okay, we have about 73%. There's a 27% saying no, that they may not need, you do not agree that they need career advancement support. They should be able to find their own careers, I'm presuming. But you have a staggering, sort of majority agreeing that they need the support. Those who don't agree, it'd be great to be able to post on the chat why you believe that women do not need the support. Three, get this question up, please. Suneet, can we get question number 3? And here we are asking, men as diversity partners is most impactful at mid to senior levels where sponsorships can create opportunities. Do you agree women must create their own opportunities at that stage rather than ask for support? Men as diversity partners is most impactful at mid to senior levels where sponsorships can create opportunities. Do you agree women must create their own opportunities at that stage rather than ask for support? We're trying to get the alternate perspective. Anyone who believes they should find their own way, or do you believe they need the support? So if you disagree, it means you believe that they actually need support there to be able to create the opportunities that they need to be able to move up. So give us your response and take 20 seconds. All right, publish the response for us, please, Sunit. Okay. So you believe they should create their own responses. Okay. They should find their own way to be, their own opportunities to be able to find their way up. Okay. All right. This is interesting. Get question number 4 up, please. Do you agree men as diversity partner programs can lapse into patronizing rather than mentoring and sponsoring and could lead to taking the gender diversity movement back? Do you agree MADP programs can lapse into patronizing rather than mentoring and sponsoring and could lead to taking the gender diversity movement back? If you disagree, it means that you believe that the support is required, even if it is for a short window, to be able to support women to be able to succeed. Take 20 seconds to be able to respond. Can we publish the feedback from this? Okay, we have a 60-40 here, all right? So interestingly, okay, you can stop this and, all right. I want some panelist reactions to what you just saw as audience feedback. Yeah, the last 2 questions are particularly interesting because we're asked whether, at mid to senior levels, should they find their own opportunities? Even at junior to mid levels, maybe they need some support, but at mid to senior, should they find their own opportunities? You did get a significant number saying yes. And we also asked whether does this have the tendency to become a patronizing program which can take the sheer movement of gender diversity and empowerment back because it shows women up to be vulnerable and needing support to be able to succeed. So give me your reactions to that. Anyone? Madhvi?
So I have a little different take on this support business. I think both men and women need support for their career development. So I don't think it's the either or thing. And I talked about the other question about the male sort of support, the men as diversity partners. So I'll just give an example if it's relevant and useful to the audience, really, that, see, first of all, research has shown that 80% of organizations have a diversity. If you ask them, they'll say we've got somebody was mentioning all organizations will say we have a diversity and inclusion focus, but not, I think about 50% of those will probably have an actual plan, right? And like I think the poll showed that people are really focused only on the hiring numbers. So I'll just share a very interesting thing we've done on men as diversity partners. So what we've got is we've got this gender diversity network called DBGO. It's called DB Gender Opportunity. And we've got a subset of that called Male Allies. It's a Male Allies program, and it's like a flagship program. Really, it's voluntary, so it's not like we tell some senior person to come and be a male ally to this. It's voluntary. We send the announcement out saying whoever wants to be an ally to developing diversity in the organization, please come and join us. And honestly, we've had huge success with that because it's voluntary. You're not forcing somebody to be a, and I think if you see, when you're talking about inclusion, gender inclusion, how can you leave a group out? How can you leave the men out of that discussion? This is exactly what happened with women, right? Centuries ago, women were never asked, do you want to be a housekeeper? Nobody asked them, just made them homekeepers, right? So I think we have to have both in that dialogue as we become an equal society.
Yes.
Mark, I want to say something here quickly.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, a study at Cornell University found that men overestimate their abilities, okay, and while women underestimate. In fact, their actual performance does not differ much in quality and output. A similar study, internal report found in Hewlett Packard that men apply for jobs or promotions when they are 60% ready or qualified for that. Whereas women wait for ages and months, even if they qualify 100%. So what do them for actually not able to see their ability? So therefore, I think it is very important. This is more to do with the conditioning for ages and centuries and centuries. Therefore, if you want to experience the exposure to diverse perspective, we must recognize that women themselves are putting barriers to their own ambitions. And we should not add one more to it. That is my final comment from my side.
Okay. I'm going to take
Sujaya,
other final comments. Yes.
Yeah. So Sujaya, I had written a post, which I think I understand you circulated yesterday, called the empathy gap. That it has been found over a period of time that whenever there is a problem, a successful leader is able to succeed because of three things: the cognitive empathy, the emotional empathy, and the emotional concern, which means they know what kind of support they need to be providing when someone with a problem is approaching them. Now, it has been found over a period of time that whenever you have a problem, should you go to someone as a leader to solve your problem who has the same experience of having handled that situation, or you should go to someone who has not experienced that situation, who will be able to provide you better empathy to be able to help you get over it. And strange as one would believe, whilst experience, we believe, tells us that if someone has experience, they are able to help you out better from the situation. Unfortunately, the Harvard research by Raquel Rutten shows that it is actually other way around, that people who are as leaders, those who have not experienced the same problem, are able to provide a better empathetic concern than the people who have experienced it. So many times in my career, women have come and told me, boss, I don't want to work under a woman leader. Or please, can you move me out from that woman manager and put me under a man manager, because my problem, she is not. Because having successfully handled those challenges, they tend to underestimate the real trouble and the problem that another woman is going through, because they believe they have been successful. Their success of having emerged winning from that situation makes them believe that, why is this woman fussing? So what? I was also pregnant. I had 2 children also. I managed my family also, and I built my career also. But her problem may be totally different. So therefore, it has often been found that if you really engage the man in the dialogue and make men the partners, instead of creating a man versus woman kind of warring situation or a warring club, you will never really end up succeeding. Men, therefore, make effective diversity partners.
Right, right. And I think I'm glad you've raised this this part on, I'm glad you've raised this piece on, women being diversity partners as well, women being diversity partners to women. I think this is such an important theme, and we brought it up last week as well when we spoke about the power of sisterhood. We're already 3 minutes past, so just a quick check with the audience. We will close in the next couple of minutes. Nathan, final words from you before we close out today.
I think the common thing around here is, what are your beliefs? What's the environment that you have grown with? We have a very healthy respect for the past, but we must have a vision for the future. And there must be a burning desire. And if you have all of this, you would be then able to put a few things in place. We don't have to believe that you have to be at the top of the pile to make a change. We can make a change at every part of the organization that we are today. The people that join us today in whichever organization, if we select the right kind of people, they'll be able to tell you to your face whether you're off or whether you're on some of the things which are right and some of the things which are wrong. People today are very indignant when you try to do this in the matter of quota. People want to be recognized for who they are. But what they need is, there are times when they need support. And at that time, you don't need to do this in a paternalistic way. You need to do this because it's the right thing for you to do. Who better than a man to understand all this, because a man has a family. The man knows there's always a father, mother, brother, sister, somebody in the family. And they know what kinds of things people are. I'll give you one example and then I will keep my mouth shut. Some years ago, some months ago, some many days ago, much before the 6.5 months was being proposed, I went to my boss to propose, my CEO, my managing partner, and I said, you know what, how nice it would be for Aarti to get 6.5 months as maternity pay by her organization. Aarti was his daughter. And he said, Nathan, that would be fantastic. I said, so in that case, do you believe that we should do it for our own people? And the moment I said this, he said, I don't want any more discussions. Let's get this done immediately. And of course, later when the rest of the country did it, it almost seems as if, it was the right thing and many things happened. But the key is, how is it that we were able to get a few things done? Many people today will just say, oh my God, somebody's away for 6.5 months. Recognize that the time before a woman went, she gave her best. In fact, when somebody goes on maternity, I also notice that they will work almost 2 or 3 times more, X, not once or 1X, 2X, 3X, because they think, oh my God, I'm going to be away. And that overhang of a guilt is there. So therefore, as men, we need to be sensitive. We need to do anything. We need to be all in all these kinds of things. I think we'll make great champions, provided we believe in it, and then we are able to influence things and do it not as another fad and a program, and then for people to know about it, do it because it's the right thing for us to do. Back to you, Sujay.
Well said. I must just point out that somebody in the chat mentions that because you talk about maternity break and so on, she just mentions that this is still perpetuating. It's not an old story. This is also to alluding to Madhavi's point, to be able to say that we still experience this in the workplace, that if we're moving off on maternity breaks, then we are supposed to compromise on rewards, on performance ratings, and the rest of that, like she did in her organization.
It all depends on which organization you are and the beliefs that you carry, and which is what I think we need to be doing. Yeah. In organizations, we need to work harder, because some of these things, and I think Akhil referred to it some time ago, you cannot brush away history. You cannot brush away culture of several thousand years.
Yes.
And therefore, we have much work to be done today.
Absolutely.
But Nathan, we can certainly influence the future, which will one day become history, where it starts with us.
Absolutely, Adil.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well said. Madhvi, anything you want to say? Anything inspiring to the women in the audience and to the men? I love the point. I love the fact that being the only other female on the panel, you have constantly raised, what is a pet theme for me, and I kind of completely allude to what you're saying, which is that a lot of what we see as gender issues are actually not really, they're not really pertaining only to women. They as much pertain to men. So, for example, when you say women don't assert, right? There are a lot of men who don't assert as well, and they struggle with that. Like, women don't know how to network. Well, there are a lot of men who don't know how to network, and they struggle with that too. So I so allude to what you're saying, and therefore that spirit of equity that you're reiterating in what you're saying. I'm going to leave you with anything last that you want to say to the audience before we close out today.
So I'm just going to say that I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to build inclusion, gender, differently abled, in the minority sector. I think if each one of us can do something in our sphere of influence, the small things will sort of bubble up and make a difference to the society. So I think there is a bias at the workplace, gender bias. I will not go shy away from that.
Yes.
I know that even though I'm kind of, in a position that I'm in, the way somebody would react to me would be different from the way they would react if I was a guy. But I think to the women and to the men, both, I would say, take it in your stride, figure out a way of getting around it. I mean, don't get bogged down by the biases. I think find a way around those, find out what is really important to you, and try and address the issue really.
Right. Thanks, Madhvi. I
Thanks.
think on that very positive note, I'm going to try and close out this conversation here today. We already exceeded by almost 10 minutes. Thank you, audience, for staying back. Thank you for the participation and the lovely comments. Very insightful comments here in the chat box. Thank you for being participative and contributing through your thoughts and views. Panelists, you're just wonderful. I think you've kind of left this theme on a very upbeat note, and on the theme of more equity, more inclusion, more fairness, more merit inside organizations. For men to be able to support and for women to be able to support talent within the organization. Let's, on that very happy note, call this conversation to a close, and wish everyone in the audience good luck to be able to continue this journey, including those who are on the panel. We have lots of work to do. So I think I'm going to leave on that note, and thank you for the conversation here today. So everyone, do log in for our next webinar, which is next week, and it is around impact. Do come in on board, and let's say thank you one more time on behalf of the audience and on the behalf of the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. Thank you, Adil. Thank you, Deepak. Nathan, thank you
Pleasure.
ever so much. Madhvi, thank you for accepting to do this wonderful conversation. All of you have a lovely evening, and please be safe.